What are the biggest challenges facing businesses today? We are living at a time of rapid change unlike anything we've experienced in human history. By the time this video is over, you're going to understand some of the very unique challenges that business owners need to be aware of right now. First, we'll talk about some of the global influences that are impacting businesses. Then we'll look at the human impacts on businesses right now. And then lastly, we'll discover how technology is both a huge boon and breaking point for many businesses. You ready to get started? Let's go. I mentioned earlier that we're living in a time of rapid change unlike anything we've ever experienced in human history. You've probably noticed the last few years, it feels like the rate of change has just increased. Now, I'm sure that we all know that our parents and grandparents and great-grandparents said things as they got older like, oh, it's hard to keep up with things, or things are getting more complicated. But I want you to understand that this that you're experiencing right now is not that. We are actually undergoing an incredible amount of change, which is creating stress. And we have to understand that there are different things that are contributing to that. One of the things are global issues. Right now, we're seeing a great deal of instability in many countries around the world, and we're kind of waiting to see what will happen. Now, I'm going to be honest, that's not new. That's happened forever. We just have a little bit more of a window into it because of social media and the speed with which information passes. If you think about 30 years ago, you didn't know all the little things that were happening in many of the countries around the world. But right now, there could be an earthquake in a country that's on the other side of the planet that happened 2 seconds ago, and you'll already know about it. The rate of information has increased, but because we have access to this information, it makes business a little less stable. In the past, while we would still have these issues, there was at least a little bit of time for things to stabilize. So maybe it looked like there might be a war over here, or there was some type of issue between two countries. But if you gave it time without interference, sometimes it would kind of bubble down. The challenge is now information's immediately leaked. We're all aware. Now we're stressed. It impacts the markets and it impacts the players and how they interact with each other, because now they're not just having a disagreement with their neighbor country, they're having a disagreement on a stage. So now they have to play a part. So that's definitely leading to a little bit more instability when it comes to businesses right now. Number 2, supply chain shortages. You probably noticed that post-COVID, it was pretty difficult to get certain things. If you were building a home or having any type of home improvement, you know that getting lumber was quite a chore and many of the other items that you needed to complete your projects. If you ordered furniture from places in the United States, places that maybe it would have used to take 2 weeks, it took 9 months. Now, we're coming down a little bit off of that in some areas, but there's still many supply chain shortages as it's becoming more and more difficult to get items out of specific countries. Some of it has to do with logistics, some of it has to do with population shifts, and other things have to do with political influences. And so we do have to keep in mind, if we have a business that depends on getting supplies from different areas, we might want to ensure that we have some type of backup. Are there more local options that can be used? Even if they're not perfect, even if they're slightly different materials, what are our other options? Any business operating today that wants to have long-term stability has to have plan B when it comes to their supply chain. Speaking of shortages, talent shortages. Have you noticed that some industries are having a very hard time attracting and retaining talent? Well, we noticed that after COVID, there were a lot of shifts. Yes, we lost some people, but in addition to that, you might even be one of these same people. Do you know people that maybe they had a shift in priorities? Maybe they weren't willing to work as many long hours, or maybe they were permitted for the first time ever to work remotely, and then it was time to come back to work and they issued those demands, you come back. Those people said, no, thank you, I'm not coming. So we have this really interesting workforce right now where there's a shortage of certain talent in different areas. And then as technology advances and rapidly increases, we've always had a shortage in certain types of positions. We've always needed more programmers. We've always needed more data scientists. But now we need even more with the proliferation of generative AI. We also know in healthcare, we've always had shortages. Many people retired because of stress due to COVID. I actually keynoted a few conferences for healthcare administrators and nurses, and many of them were on their way out the door because the level of stress was so high. paired with what they perceived as a lack of appreciation. We've seen in airlines where many pilots took an early retirement because of the instability around COVID. Now that we're moving through it, many airlines don't have enough pilots left to operate their fleets. And so as a result, they're even changing the way they recruit, where some organizations are no longer requiring 4-year degrees. You can actually just go right into their training where they teach you how to be a pilot. We're even seeing that technology companies are doing something similar, where many companies like Google are saying, you don't need this bachelor's or master's degree. You come right to us. We're going to put you through our own training as if it's a Google degree, and then you're going to be trained in our philosophy and our way of doing things. I have a question for you, and I'd love to see your response in the comments section. Have you seen any shortages that have impacted your life? Whether it's talent shortages, whether it's supplies, maybe you're redecorating. I'm just curious to see what you've seen. Whether you're a business owner or we're talking about things that impact you personally, what have you seen? Go ahead and put that in the comments. I'd love to read it and ask you some questions. So let's get back to the information here. We've talked about material shortages and talent shortages, but the one thing we haven't hit on yet is one of the biggest things impacting many companies, and it's taking a lot of the smaller companies off guard, and that's digital transformation. That's the fact that we're moving more and more into technology. And companies that used to just operate brick and mortar and have minimal technology, it's very hard to sustain if you don't have some type of online presence and if you're not using technology. This could not have been made more clear than during the pandemic, where there were many businesses that had no ability to operate outside of their individual unit or their building. So when they didn't have access to that building, the businesses died or almost died. They came pretty close to bankruptcy. Whereas the ones that were able to sell products and services remotely, through their websites, they were able to sustain quite a bit better. So when we think about digital transformation, you start thinking about things that you can automate within your company so that you can be even more efficient. That doesn't mean that you have to necessarily lay off people, but it does mean that the people that you do have or keep are operating at a higher level, they're being more innovative, maybe they're spending more time on research and development and doing those higher level tasks that aren't repetitive, right? When it comes to digital transformation, that also has to do with how your company connects with your suppliers, how it delivers to your clients as well. And so right now, when so many companies are innovating, the larger ones, it's making it harder for the smaller ones. So to give you an example, if you think about maybe you need something from around the house or you need something purchased for your home, oftentimes we'll go to Amazon and we'll go on there and order whatever it is that we need. And when I say order from Amazon, I've ordered everything from groceries. I don't know if you know what Toto toilets are, those special Japanese toilets that have dryers and water. It's basically a electronic bidet. I've even ordered that on Amazon. You can get anything on Amazon you want it. And it's very easy to check out, get what you want from different carriers, and it arrives to your house very quickly. Well, when you run into brands that are not located on Amazon and you have to go through there and then you have to put in your credit card information and then it takes even longer, it's very hard for those other companies that may not be as far along as Amazon with digital transformation to keep up. So I'm not saying we have to necessarily keep up with the behemoths, but we do have to be mindful that we don't want to be buried by them. Speaking of not being buried by things, we don't want to be buried because we want to stay future-proof. What you're going to find in the description of this video is a link to download the Future Ready Playbook. This playbook is chock full of activities that you can do by yourself, with your team, or even family members, where you can actually get information that you need to future-proof yourself, your career, or your organization. If you haven't already done it, download it today.